and I told the client what happened. Then the client tweaked out on me. He was like, hey, y'all, being an ASL interpreter, it's not like the most popular profession in the world, not by a long shot. But goodness gracious, when you get into it, you learn so much about yourself, about other people, about language. So let me just tell you just a few of the things that I've learned since I became an ASL interpreter. Let's get into it. I learned the difference between deaf and deaf. Okay? There's a difference. Now, you may hear this referred to as big D, little d deaf. Huh? But I don't call it that. I call it capital and lowercase deaf. All right? So capital deaf or uppercase deaf, when you're dealing with a person who is capital D deaf, that means that they are culturally identifying as a deaf person. They use sign language as their primary language. They interact with other deaf persons. They may use interpreters. They do things and customs, traditions, and norms that deaf people do culturally, which is the capital or uppercase D deaf. Now, lowercase d deaf, that is when you find the people are just talking about the audio of being deaf. All right. So in that aspect, you may have a person who they may call themselves just having hearing loss. In this instance, they may call themselves hearing impaired. Please understand, if you go to a uppercase D deaf person and you call them hearing impaired, they'll probably be offended. Like 99% chance they'll be offended. Hearing impaired is a medical term that really looks down on deaf people, especially the cultural uppercase D deaf people. Lowercase d deaf people, they might call themselves hearing impaired. Again, because lowercase d is solely focusing on the audiological thing versus uppercase D deaf, they are cultural. They have their culture, their norm, their language that is more than just the audio of hearing. Also, you will hear a lot from people who are uppercase D deaf. You will hear a lot of them say, deaf people can do anything but hear. Anything but hear. So that's exactly where that comes from. You do not call a deaf person hearing impaired. That does not work. All right, next thing. I learned a lot about the misconceptions that hearing people have about deaf people, because there are a lot of misconceptions that hearing people have with deaf people. Now being an interpreter, I can see it, I recognize it, and I can hear it, and I can address it for sure. But the one most common that deaf people hate, interpreters hate hearing and everything, the one that I hear all the time, and it's so interesting, hearing people will say, can deaf people drive? That one, I don't know where that came from. Like, out of all the things you can ask a deaf person, the most common question is, can they drive? Can you drive? Over here, you have to worry about someone can hear. Think about it, hearing people. You be blasting the music all the way up. You can't hear what the dude in the behind you saying anyway. You might as well be deaf too. So I don't really know where that really comes from. I don't understand it. I never thought of it. I never had that question, but now being an interpreter, I recognize a lot of people think that deaf people can't drive or something like that. So that's something I learned. So next thing, what I've learned, I learned that your word is your bond. Okay, commitments are very important. It's important in all aspects of life. It really is. But I can pinpoint exactly when I learned it when it comes to ASL or interpreting. There was one time, a few years ago, my very first time volunteering at a deaf-blind camp. And I was a service support provider, or a SSP. So basically, what we do is people who are deaf-blind, this is another name is co-navigators also. You could be referred as co-navigators. They do have distinctions between the two. I am not an expert into the deaf-blind arena, but a SSP and a co-navigator does have some distinctions, but they also do have some overlap. I was an SSP for one camper. Me and him was really cool. And When the whole day was over at night, I did not go into their bunker. They did know their bunker, so I just dropped them off pretty much in front of where their bunker was. I kind of walked them there, and then he knows how to walk inside and do the rest of his thing for that day. Well, at the end of the day, I go in front of where his bunker is at, and I tell him that, all right, I had a good day. I will see you back here right in this spot. I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 so we can go to breakfast. He was like, all right, cool. We left. The very next day, I'm a little bit late, all right? I get there probably, let's say like 9:15, okay? So yes, I'm late. I'm not extremely late, but I am late, 9:15, whatever. Why when I pull up, my camper is standing outside alone, literally no one around him. We basically in the freaking woods. This man is standing outside in the exact same spot that I left him. And I ran up to him. I got out the car. I didn't even park. I just kind of pulled over, got the car. I was like, yo, are you okay? And he said, yeah, you told me you was going to be here at 9, so I'm waiting here. I was like, son, oh, I felt so bad. I felt so bad. First off, all right, before I started feeling bad, I was thinking of, wait a minute, where are the other campers? Like, did they really just leave you right here? No one saw you. No one thought of you. They just left you here, just standing here. But then I had to take accountability. I told him I'll be there at 9. And it was 9:15. I don't know how long he was waiting there, but he was standing in that exact spot. And that taught me just how the word is bond when it comes to people. It comes to everybody, but especially when it comes to deaf people, deaf blind people. Your word is your bond. That reputation is important. The value of a human connection, the value of when you know somebody, when you say something, you do it. They hold that to a strong point into these different kinds of communities. And most times it's these marginalized communities that really, really cherish connection with people. Think about it. There aren't a lot of people who will be willing to talk with a deaf-blind person. There aren't a lot of people who know how to talk with a deaf-blind person. And that's what I had to learn. I had to learn how these aren't just people who just think I'm just an interpreter and whatever. No, these are people that actually care about the people that they interact with. So when I tell them 9 o'clock, I best be there at 9 o'clock. And that's what I learned. That was awful. Also, another thing that I learned is that if your crop don't grow, you go hungry. All right. One more time for the people at the back. If your crop don't grow, you go hungry. So this is when you're talking about the business aspect of interpreting. In the area that I'm in right now, the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia area, there are a lot of interpreters. Okay, there are a lot of interpreters. Compared to the rest of America, we have one of the top hub for interpreters and deaf community also. There is not a shortage of work. It is not. However, when it comes to those lucrative assignments, those high profile assignments, the things that everybody want, that is when you can start to see a lot of competition happen. Well, the one thing I learned is that if I don't get picked, if I don't work, I don't eat. If your crop don't grow, you go hungry. I had to learn that because I came from military and then working in other jobs where if I had a customer or not, it don't matter. I'm getting paid. But being a freelance interpreter, if you don't get the job, you won't get paid. If I don't work that day, I do not get paid that day. And that really told me, okay, then how can I make myself stand out compared to these other interpreters? Not all the time can I make myself stand out by showing them my skill. So I had to learn what are other things that make me the best choice? What are other things that make me the best fit for this assignment or this client? I have to really think about that. And not all the time can you do anything about the hard skill. So I focus a lot on the soft skills, that interpersonal side. That is a way to be able to still get in those positions that you can be able to show the skills that you know. But like I said, I learned it real quick. If you don't work, your crop don't grow, you go hungry. That's for real. And yet there's more. I also learned This one's another story time. All right, so I learned what the job of an interpreter actually is. A job of an interpreter, yes, it is to interpret, but the main job of an interpreter is what? To provide access. And providing access isn't only just about interpreting. And I learned that the hard way. It was a time I was interpreting for a guy that I knew. I knew him before I was his interpreter for that day. Me and him were cool. We hung out and all that stuff. As an interpreter, I was cool interpreting for my friend, but I wanted to make sure, like, all right, that's my friend. So I want to make sure, like, I'm good, right? We were interpreting for a workshop and it was adult education. Students in the back were talking and like laughing or something like that. The teacher was getting annoyed. Now me, I'm over here was like, no, I'm gonna make sure I'm interpreting right. So everything the teacher said, I'm interpreting, I'm doing the best I can, doing all my stuff. While those students in the back are still playing and goofing off. Well, every time the teacher kind of addressed it, the teacher would kind of just like, hey, be quiet. Like he'll just try to really address it real quick and move on. I never interpreted that. I never did. Maybe because I was still trying to catch up. Maybe because I thought, that's not the important part. I was too fixated onto the presentation. I wasn't understanding what my job was. My job wasn't just to say what he said. My job is to provide access. Didn't know that. So one time when the students kind of laughed, the teacher just flipped out. The teacher flipped out. And the deaf person didn't understand why. And afterwards, when the teacher flipped out, of course I interpreted that. Now he flipped out. The whole class had to take like a 10-minute break. And I told the client what happened. Then the client tweaked out on me. He was like, why didn't you tell me? You are my interpreter. I could have told them to stop. Like, he was mad at me. And I was like, oh, brother, what you mean? I'm interpreting what cuz said. What you talking about? And that's when he told me. He was like, no, as an interpreter, you don't just interpret what he say. You are my ears. What you hear, you tell me so I can have access to it. That is the reason you're here. He said that a lot ruder, but I'm just telling you it for like this because that's the point of it. And I was like, oh, okay, I got it. So we better know that when that class came back, I'm talking about, I was like, hey, client, bird chirping, hey, door closed, hey, pencil sharp. Like, I was telling him everything where he was like, hey, I don't care about all that. But you know what? I learned the point of being an interpreter is not just interpreting, it is providing access. That is the point of an interpreter. And the last thing that I'm going to tell you for this video, of course, I learned about me. I learned about how I see people. I learned about how I see things. I learned about how language is used. A lot of times with interpreting, I don't say anything. Like me, do I talk? No, I just relay what other people say. So imagine a situation where I have my deaf person, I have my hearing person, I'm in the middle, and of course I'm interpreting, relaying the conversation. If the deaf person says something that I think is not correct, or I think is inappropriate, I think is rude, I need to analyze that. Why? Why do I think that? Why do I feel like this is not right to say? Why do I have any kind of feelings towards what their message is? Why not I just relay it as best as I can? Why do I think that? And what happens is, as an interpreter, we need to make sure we're having that internal dialogue all the time, because what happens instinctively, if we hear something that we feel is not appropriate, we may try to cover it up, make it a little better. We may try to kind of get around it to still get to the point. But why are we doing that? It is not right to do that. But I'm not really talking about the ethics of the interpreting in this specific instance. I'm talking about thinking about what makes you think that this is wrong? What makes you think that this is right? What makes you think about that as you're doing your interpreting, because you learn so much about yourself, just like I learned about myself. And I'll give you a bonus one just because I've just learned that this position is very humbling, being an interpreter. This is a very selfless position, and I've learned so much because now I am learning different perspectives unlike my own. I learned about a different way of life unlike my own, and I feel that's definitely made me a better, well-rounded person. So those are a few things that I learned since being an interpreter. I really hope that you all learned from this. If there are some things that you all learned being an interpreter or being around interpreters or just in general, please comment it down below. And while you're down there, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Set the notification so you don't miss another video because I got them coming back to back to back. I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.